Okay, let's get into this. We're focusing on a really critical moment, the Indian Revolt of 1857. But looking at it through one person, a really compelling figure, this is our deep dive into your sources on Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi. The idea is to pull out the key details and figure out why her story, well, why it still hits so hard.
It really is fascinating, how these sources track her transformation from queen to this incredibly powerful symbol during all that chaos. Your materials really zero in on the specific events that shaped that image.
Yeah, that's exactly what jumped out at me, too. So our sources say she was born Manikarnika, 1828, Varanasi. But what's really striking, and the articles stress this, is how she was raised. So unusual for the time. Not the expected domestic focus, but training in, well, horse riding, swordsmanship, archery.
Skills you'd expect for a warrior, really, not a young woman back then.
Exactly.
And that training, reading your sources, it feels like it wasn't just incidental. It seems it genuinely prepared her for, well, everything that came later.
Right.
Laid the groundwork.
Absolutely. So she marries the Maharaja, Gangadhar Rao, becomes Lakshmi, Queen of Jhansi. But then things take a huge turn. Her husband dies, and crucially, without a biological heir.
And this is where the British East India Company steps in, right? With their policies, specifically the doctrine of lapse. Your sources are pretty clear this wasn't just some abstract rule. It was very much a tool they used for annexation.
Right. Under this doctrine, if a ruler died without a, quote, natural heir, the company could just take over the state. They often ignored adopted sons, even if that was perfectly valid under Indian custom. And your sources show that's exactly what happened in Jhansi. They refused to recognize her adopted son. They just annexed the state and basically told the Rani she had to leave the palace.
Yeah, and that refusal on her part, that defiance right from the get-go, that's so important. Your sources really underline this. It wasn't just personal. It was a direct challenge to her role, a violation of tradition.
Yeah.
And it definitely fueled that wider anger against the company, just grabbing territory.
Okay, so fast forward to 1857. The big rebellion kicks off, starts in places like Meerut. Your sources mention that, and it spreads fast. How did things ignite in Jhansi, according to these materials?
Well, the sources describe the local situation getting tense. An uprising happens in Jhansi itself. British officers were killed. And in that power vacuum, Rani Lakshmibai stepped up. Maybe initially just trying to protect her people, her state, but she fully took charge. Your sources say she didn't hesitate. Ruled with discipline, started fortifying Jhansi right away, preparing.
She must have known a fight was coming.
Yep.
And it did. March 1858. Sir Hugh Rose and the British forces arrive and lay siege to the city.
And the defense she led over those, 2 weeks? That's really where the legend builds. Your sources paint a vivid picture, leading from the front lines, wearing warrior clothes, not royal robes, fighting on horseback, fiercely.
And that incredible detail the sources mention, fighting with her infant son strapped to her back.
Yeah.
Wow, that image is just, it says so much, doesn't it? Her dual role, her absolute commitment. What do the sources say about how effective she was, her impact?
Oh, immense personal courage, definitely. That comes through strongly. And it wasn't just her own side noticing. Even Sir Hugh Rose, the guy leading the siege against her, he's quoted in your material, apparently called her the most dangerous of all Indian leaders.
Coming from the enemy commander, that says a lot.
It really does. It underlines just how formidable she was, the threat they felt she posed.
So the city is eventually breached after weeks of hard fighting, but she doesn't give up. Your sources talk about this daring escape, right?
Yeah, she escapes, regroups with other leaders like Tantia Tope, keeps the fight going. But like you said, her final stand wasn't long after. Near Gwalior, June 18, 1858.
And she's fatally wounded there.
Yes, and your sources point out she was just 29, incredibly young. It really highlights how intense and how brief her central role in the revolt actually was.
So looking back at this deep dive, through your sources, what's the big takeaway? But courage, maybe? Facing impossible odds. She starts as a queen defending her state, but becomes something else entirely through her actions, her sacrifice.
Exactly. Your sources really show she became much more than just a historical figure in a specific battle. She evolved into this powerful symbol. Resistance, defiance, honor, dignity. Her story just became too big, too potent to end with her death.
And that's maybe the lasting thing from these materials. Her legacy isn't just in textbooks. It's alive, like your sources mentioned, in poems, songs, that collective memory. She wasn't really defeated in spirit. She became this enduring symbol.
She absolutely transcended the event itself.
Yeah. So a final thought, maybe, something sparked by this deep dive for you to consider. How do figures like her, like Rani Lakshmibai, whose stories are kept alive like this, generation after generation, How do they continue to shape our ideas about freedom, about dignity, even now? Something powerful to think about.